Rain had been falling for 2 days straight. Not the soft kind. The ugly kind. Cold, relentless rain that turned soul gray and kept every news station running the same headline. Missing. Seo Jun Kong, 10 years old. Last seen in Hanam District. Then the black SUVs arrived. They stopped hard in the middle of Mapo Street, doors flying open before the engines even died. Security stepped out first. Then the mother. Park Hyun-jae looked like she hadn't slept in 48 hours. And then she saw him. Her son. Standing beneath the awning of a shuttered convenience store, holding the hand of a black woman she had never seen before. Seo Jun. Seo Jun's shoulders dropped the second he saw his mother, like he'd been holding himself together for 2 straight days and had finally run out of strength. Chelsea Vaughn barely had time to stand before Hyun-jae rushed forward and snatched the child away from her so hard he nearly slipped on the wet pavement. "What are you doing with my son?" Chelsea stared at her in disbelief. "I found him alone. Don't talk to me." Hyun-jae pulled the boy behind her like Chelsea was dangerous. "Who sent you?" "Nobody sent me. He's been wandering around for 2 days. She had him." One of the security men cut in sharply. Chelsea turned slowly. "Yes, because I was helping him. Try to keep up." The man stepped toward her. Seo Jun looked between them helplessly, eyes already filling again. "Mom, wait." Then the police arrived. 2 officers stepped out, saw the Kang family convoy, and immediately shifted tone. "Ma'am," one officer said to Chelsea, "you'll need to come with us." Chelsea blinked once. "You haven't asked me a single question." "It's procedure." "No," she cut in. "Procedure would be asking where I found him." Her jaw tightened. "I work in youth crisis intervention." I literally tried to show her my ID. "I don't care who you are." Hyun-jae snapped. Chelsea laughed once. Short. Disbelieving. Clearly. One of the guards reached for her arm. Chelsea jerked away instantly. "Don't touch me again." The crowd around them was growing now. Phones were already recording. The officer gestured toward the cruiser. "Ma'am, please cooperate." Chelsea looked at all of them for a long moment. The security team, the police, the mother clutching the child she had just saved. Then she nodded once. "Fine." She started walking toward the cruiser herself. "Head high." But before getting in, she stopped and turned toward the crowd. "When you people find out what actually happened," she said calmly, "every single one of you is going to feel stupid." Then she got in. And the worst part? That wasn't even the beginning of what they were about to uncover. Stay with me because you definitely want to know what happens next. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss anything. Chelsea Vaughn left her office at 6:47 p.m., which was late even by her standards, and her standards were already unreasonable. She worked for the city's Youth Crisis Intervention Unit, a department that sat at the intersection of child protection, mental health response, and street outreach. Her caseload on any given week included runaway teenagers, kids aging out of foster care without any support structure, families in crisis, children who had been reported missing but whose situations were more complicated than a police report could capture. She was not a surgeon. She was not a lawyer. She was the person you called when a scared child was sitting alone somewhere and nobody knew why, and the situation required patience before it required force. She was walking to the subway when she saw him. He was small, sitting with his back against the shuttered door of a convenience store, knees pulled to his chest, red raincoat soaked through because the hood had fallen back. He wasn't crying. He had passed crying. He was in that quiet, hollowed-out state that came after crying, when there was nothing left to spend. Chelsea stopped. She assessed from a distance first. No adult nearby. No one looking for him. No bags, no phone, nothing. She noted the quality of his clothing under the mud and rain, the small brand details that said this child did not come from poverty. She noted the way his eyes tracked her when she approached, not with hope, but with animal wariness. She crouched about 4 feet away. Not close enough to crowd him. Close enough to be heard. "Hey," she said. "I'm Chelsea. I work with kids. I'm not going to grab you or yell at you." He stared at her. "You don't have to talk," she said. "I'll just sit here for a minute." She sat on the wet pavement beside him. She didn't pull out her phone. She didn't call anyone. She just sat. 3 minutes passed. Then, "I'm cold." "I know," she said. "I am too, a little." Another silence. I got lost, he said. Very quietly. Like a confession. Yeah, Chelsea said. I figured it was something like that. I've been out here a long time. 2 days. His chin trembled. He nodded. Okay. She kept her voice even. Not dramatic. Not pitying. Just steady. My job is actually to help kids who are in situations like this one. So you found the right person. You're not police? No. I work with a different department. I help kids get back to their families safely. The word families did something to his face. My mom is going to be so scared, he said. She is, Chelsea agreed. And that's okay. It's okay for her to be scared. It means she loves you. Something in the steadiness of that statement seemed to reach him. He shifted closer. Not much, but enough. Over the next 40 minutes, slowly and carefully, she learned what happened. His name was Seo Jun. He'd gotten separated from his nanny during a public panic situation 2 days earlier, a crowd surge at a market. In the chaos, he'd run. He didn't know which direction. He found a hiding place and stayed there until dark, and by then he was too disoriented to find his way back. He had avoided strangers because strangers were what his parents had told him to avoid. He had waited for someone who felt safe. Why did I feel safe? Chelsea asked, genuinely curious. Seo Jun thought about this seriously. You didn't run toward me, he said. Everyone else either ignored me or came too fast. Chelsea had been in this work long enough to know that children were often the clearest readers of human behavior in any room. She pulled out her phone to call her department's emergency line and get the family notification process started through proper channels. That was when the SUVs arrived. Central Division smelled like damp uniforms and old coffee. Chelsea sat in the holding area and was not afraid because she understood systems well enough to know that systems failed regularly and that fear made failures worse. She was insulted. She was furious in the contained, architectural way she'd learned to be furious after years of watching institutions fail the people they were built to serve. She asked for her phone call and they gave it to her. She dialed. One ring. Chelsea. Her father's voice. Malcolm Vaughn did not waste syllables on hello when something in the contact pattern told him to skip it. Dad, I'm in the Central Division. What happened? Please just come. She heard him exhale once. Then, I'm on my way. Malcolm Vaughn arrived in 22 minutes, which was fast enough that the desk officers visibly recalibrated their posture when he walked in. He was not loud. He was not performative. He had the particular quality of a man who had spent decades in rooms where decisions were made and had never once needed to raise his voice to be taken seriously. He went to Chelsea first. Nia. Her childhood nickname. He only used it when he was scared. What is this? Talk to me. She told him everything. Quietly and chronologically. The boy, the rain, the family's arrival, the security guard, the officers who'd made their minds up before they'd asked a single question. When she finished, Malcolm sat very still for a moment. Then he stood up. I want the ranking officer in this building, he said to the nearest desk officer. Right now, please. Not loudly. Not theatrically. But the ranking officer appeared within 4 minutes. Across the city, in a house that had been filled with controlled panic for 2 days and was now filled with the unwinding of it, Kang Ji-hoon arrived. He moved through the entrance without announcement, which was normal for him. His sister Sun Hee was sitting in the living room with Seo Jun curled against her side, a blanket over both of them, the boy asleep finally with the spent heaviness of someone who had been surviving for too long. The family's head of domestic security gave Ji-hoon the summary in the hallway. 30 seconds. Efficient. Ji-hoon went to his sister. How is he? He's fine. Sun Hee's voice broke slightly on the word fine. He's fine. He's here. He walked in and saw the boy and hugged and kissed him. How was he found? She told him about the woman. The black woman near the convenience store on Mapo Street. How she'd had Seo Jun's hand. How security had surrounded her. How the police had been called. How the whole scene had spiraled within minutes. Ji-hoon listened with the expression he wore when he was processing information carefully. Then Sun Hee said, almost as an afterthought, with the guilt already starting to surface on her face, the police detained her. The room got very quiet. They detained her, Ji-hoon repeated. She had him in her arms and she was Did anyone ask why she had him? Sun-hee opened her mouth. Closed it. Did anyone ask her anything at all before they put her in that car? The silence answered. Ji-hoon's face did something then. Not an explosion. Not performance. The opposite. He went cold and completely still in a way that the people who knew him had learned to recognize as the most serious register he had. It was more unsettling than anger would have been. Which station? Ji-hoon. Which station, Sun-hee? Central Division, but please don't. He was already moving toward the door. At Central Division, Malcolm Vaughn had the ranking officer in a conversation that had stopped being a conversation and became an accounting. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. My daughter is a licensed youth crisis intervention specialist employed by the city, he said. She is trained specifically to recover children in distress. She found this child, maintained his safety, and was in the process of making an official report when your officers arrived and detained her without asking a single question. I would like you to explain to me which protocol authorized that. The officer was speaking. He was using words like procedure and given the circumstances, and we didn't have full information, and Chelsea sat and listened and let her father work, because Malcolm Vaughn in full precision was something worth watching. Then the station door opened. Kang Ji-hoon walked in. Officers straightened immediately. Then he saw her. And he stopped. Chelsea felt it before she understood it. Something in the back of her chest, like a key turning in a lock she'd forgotten, was there. She looked at him. He looked at her. The noise of the room became momentarily distant. You're the woman from Busan, he said. Chelsea's breath shifted. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. You survived. Malcolm Vaughn turned from the officer to look at his daughter. Every other person in the room had the same confused expression, the sensation of having walked into a scene that had started long before they arrived. 3 years earlier, Chelsea had helped save a wounded stranger at a private clinic in Busan. He'd arrived unconscious, bleeding heavily, surrounded by men who asked for discretion instead of explanations. Chelsea helped anyway. Near dawn, the man briefly opened his eyes and asked her one question. Why are you helping me? Chelsea hadn't looked up from what she was doing. Because you needed help. By morning, he was gone. She never expected to see him again. Ji-hoon crossed the room and the officers stepped back without being asked to. He stood in front of Chelsea and said, quietly, the charges are being dropped. I know, Chelsea said. My family. I know. He paused. Something moved across his face that wasn't quite discomfort. More like reckoning. I should have arrived sooner. Chelsea looked at him for a long moment. You weren't the one who handcuffed me, she said. That landed. He absorbed it without deflecting. Malcolm Vaughn looked at Ji-hoon with a slow, careful appraisal of a man deciding whether something was what it appeared to be. Ji-hoon met his eyes and didn't look away, which was the correct response, and Malcolm's expression shifted fractionally. Chelsea collected her things and walked out of the Central Division with her father. The night air hit her, and she breathed it in and let it out slowly. Behind her she heard footsteps. Chelsea. She turned. Ji-hoon had followed her out. He stood a few feet away, hands at his sides, jaw set in the way of a man who was not accustomed to the position he was currently in. The apology isn't mine to give on behalf of everyone, he said. But I'm giving it anyway. She studied him. The rain had stopped. The street was wet and quiet. I respect that you came, she said. And she meant it. The first call came 4 days later. Late. After 10. Chelsea was home and tired in the specific way that came from work that cost something emotionally, sitting on her couch with a cup of tea gone cold, when her phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. I wanted to make sure you got home safely, Ji-hoon said. The other night. I got home 4 days ago. I was working up to it. She almost smiled. Working up to asking if I got home? Working up to calling. She tucked her feet underneath her. I got home fine. Good. A silence. Not uncomfortable. You still talk like you're running an interrogation, she said. I've been told that. Does it work? Usually. Not particularly effective on me. No, he said. And she could hear something in his voice that she didn't quite have a name for. I noticed. The conversation lasted an hour and 20 minutes, which neither of them mentioned and both of them noticed. He asked her to dinner the following week. She had been expecting somewhere designed to impress her. Some high floor, city view, staff who materialized and disappeared like trained weather. Instead, he took her to a ramen place in a narrow side street that had 8 tables and no reservations and steam so thick from the kitchen that the windows were permanently fogged. The owner knew him by something other than his name, which Chelsea noted. "You come here often," she said. "When I want to think without anyone watching me do it." She looked around the small room. Nobody was watching them. Nobody recognized him. It occurred to her that this might be one of the only places in his life where that was true. They ordered. The food arrived and they ate. "Tell me something true about your work," she said. He looked at her. "My family handles complicated situations." "That sounds illegal." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile yet. The first movement toward one. "It's a wide category. So it is illegal." That was when he actually smiled. Small and reluctant and real, the kind of smile that arrived despite itself, and Chelsea recognized it for what it was, something this man almost never gave anyone. She filed it away carefully. 2 weeks later, he came to find her at work. He hadn't announced himself. He simply arrived at the building and waited, which was its own statement about how he operated. Chelsea came out to the lobby and found him standing there looking faintly out of place in the fluorescent light, wearing what she was beginning to recognize as his default expression in public, watchful and composed, and she led him upstairs without explaining much. Ji-hoon watched Chelsea work with a teenage runaway for nearly an hour. She didn't lecture him, didn't pressure him, didn't pretend she could solve his life in one conversation. She simply listened in a way that slowly made the boy stop bracing for judgment. By the time Chelsea stepped back into the hallway, Ji-hoon's expression had changed. "You do this every day?" he asked quietly. Chelsea shrugged lightly. "Different version of it." He looked back through the small glass window. "You make people feel safe," he said. Chelsea looked at him for a moment, but didn't answer. She remembered the way he said it long after he left. Sun Hee-kong came to Chelsea's office on a Tuesday morning without calling ahead. Chelsea's assistant told her she had a visitor, and Chelsea came out to find Ji-hoon's sister sitting in the lobby, straight-backed and uncomfortable, wearing sunglasses she was clearly using for the privacy they offered rather than the light. Sun Hee took them off when Chelsea appeared. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Not currently crying, but recently. "I didn't know how to call first," Sun Hee said. "You didn't have to call," Chelsea said. "Come in." They sat in Chelsea's small office with its stacked files and the child's drawing taped to the wall above the window, and Sun Hee looked at her hands for a moment before she looked up. "I pulled my child away from you like you were a threat," she said. "Like my first instinct, when I saw my son safe and whole and alive, was to punish the person who made him that way. Because of how you looked." She stopped. Started again. "I have been telling myself that I panicked. That it was the fear of 2 days without him. And those things are true. But they're not the whole truth, and I'm tired of letting them be the whole truth." Chelsea was quiet for a moment. "You were terrified," she said. "I know what that looks like. I've seen it 100 times. That doesn't make it right." "No," Chelsea agreed. "It doesn't." "I'm sorry," Sun Hee said. "For all of it. For what I did on that street. For what happened at the station. For the officers and the cameras and every single person who watched and didn't stop it." Chelsea looked at her steadily. There was a version of this moment that could have been bitter, that could have cataloged everything that had happened and what it cost. She chose a different version. "Your son is a remarkable kid," she said. "He was brave for 2 days by himself. You raised that." Sun Hee pressed her hand over her mouth briefly. "Then, he asks about you. Every day." Chelsea felt something warm move through her chest. "Tell him I'm doing fine." "Maybe you could tell him yourself," Sun Hee said carefully. "If you wanted. The family would like that. Ji-hoon would like that. Though he would never say it that way." Chelsea almost laughed. "No, he wouldn't." Ji-hoon's father requested to see him the following evening. The conversation happened in his office overlooking the river, quiet and controlled in the way most serious conversations in their family were. "You're getting attached," his father said. Ji-hoon didn't answer. "People are talking already. People always talk. This is different." His father studied him carefully. "You barely know this woman." Ji-hoon's expression didn't shift. "I know enough." "And if your judgment changes because of her?" Ji-hoon finally looked up. "Then maybe my judgment needed changing." The King family dinner was a Sunday, set in a house that was large without being intimidating, filled with the organized warmth of a family that had pulled together after a crisis and was still, several weeks later, slightly dazed by the relief of it. Chelsea arrived, and the grandmother was the first person to reach her, which she had not been prepared for. The grandmother took her hands and held them and said something in Korean that Ji-hoon, standing slightly behind, translated quietly. "She says you smell like someone who belongs here." Chelsea blinked. "Is that a compliment?" From her, "It's the only kind there is." Seo-jun attached himself to Chelsea's side within approximately 4 minutes and stayed there for the entire evening, which the adults found endearing and Ji-hoon found quietly triumphant in a way he didn't let show much. Chelsea talked with the grandmother through Ji-hoon's translations, ate more than she planned to, and found herself at the center of a family's effort to recalibrate, to integrate, to make something right in the only way families knew how, which was to cook too much food and refuse to let you leave. She did not try to perform anything. She was not charming in a calculated way or gracious in a strategic way. She was simply herself, and that appeared to be the thing they had been hoping for. At one point, the grandmother looked around the table and said, with the frankness of someone who had long passed the age of diplomatic softening, "She brought our child home." "Why are you all acting like she isn't already family?" Nobody had an answer to that. The table got very quiet in the particular way that happened when something true arrived before anyone was ready for it. Ji-hoon met Chelsea's eyes across the table. She raised her eyebrows slightly. He looked away, but not before she saw the corner of his mouth move. Months passed. The work continued. Chelsea's caseload didn't lighten, but something in the carrying of it did. Ji-hoon called when he said he would and showed up when he didn't announce it, which she had come to recognize as his primary love language. Presence. Not declarations. Not gestures. Presence. They argued sometimes, because they were both people who thought clearly and weren't afraid to say so, and their arguments had the quality of two people with high standards negotiating seriously rather than two people trying to wound each other. He didn't defer to her, and she didn't perform gentleness to soften him. It worked. One evening in early winter, she told him about the night in Busan. The parts he hadn't seen, the 3 hours she'd spent working on him, the decision she'd made in 4 seconds, the way the two men had stood in the corner watching her with expressions she'd filed away and never entirely forgotten. He was quiet for a long time after. "You could have refused," he said. "Yes." "You could have called the authorities." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" She looked at him. "Because you needed help." He recognized those words. She watched the recognition move across his face slowly, like light through water. "The same thing you said that night," he said quietly. It was true then, too. He took her back to Mapo Street on an evening in early spring. Chelsea recognized the street immediately. She looked at the stretch of wet pavement, the shuttered store still shuttered, the awning where she had crouched and waited for a small boy to decide she was safe. Ji-hoon got out and she got out, and they stood there in the light rain because of course it was raining, and he looked at the street for a moment before he turned to her. "The worst day we ever met," he said, "became the best thing that ever happened to me." Chelsea looked at him. He reached into his coat pocket. "I'm not doing this in a restaurant," he said. "I'm not doing it in front of a crowd. I'm doing it here because this is where it started and it should start here again." The ring was simple and serious and exactly what she would have chosen. She cried. Not from weakness. Not from surprise. From the full weight of everything it had taken to arrive at this exact moment, this exact street, this exact man standing in the rain without a single performance in him, just truth. She said yes before he finished the question. The wedding happened 3 months later. Before the ceremony, in the small room where Chelsea was waiting, the door opened and Sun-hee came in. She had Chelsea's veil in her hands. She crossed the room quietly and stood behind her and arranged it without being asked, smoothing the edges with the focused attention of a woman who needed something to do with her hands because otherwise she would cry. Their eyes met in the mirror. Nothing needed to be said. Both of them knew what this gesture cost and what it meant, and both of them accepted it for exactly what it was. Then Seo-jun appeared in the doorway in a small suit that he had been extremely serious about, looking at Chelsea with the expression of someone managing a very significant feeling. "Chelsea," he said carefully, "after today, when you marry my uncle." He paused. "Can I still call you my hero?" Chelsea turned and crouched to his eye level, which was exactly what she had done the first time she had ever seen him, on a wet pavement outside a shuttered store. "You can call me both," she said. He nodded solemnly, like a contract had been signed. The music began, and Chelsea Vaughn walked toward the rest of her life with her head high, the way she had walked out of Central Division on the worst night, the way she had walked into every room that had ever tried to make her smaller. Not performing bravery, simply possessing it. And Chelsea Vaughn walked toward the rest of her life with her head high, the same way she had walked into every room that ever tried to make her smaller. This time, she wasn't walking alone. If this story stayed with you, you know what to do next. Subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any story. But tell me, would you have trusted her that day if you were the one holding that child? Because sometimes the people the world misunderstands are the same ones holding everything together.